Thank you for tuning in to the Afternoon Pint Podcast. Our show will start right after these messages from our sponsors.
Hey, Matt. We're thinking of selling our home and finding a bigger place.
Oh, really? I thought you guys loved where you lived.
Oh, we do. Our family is just growing. With pets. A dog, a cat, 2 guinea pigs, a hamster.
And you're planning on getting more?
Maybe a goat or a crocodile.
Well, I have the person for you. Kimmy Najad is an experienced real estate agent who prides herself in finding the perfect home for her clients.
We're just browsing now. I'm not sure if we really need a realtor yet.
Yeah, no worries. Kimmy can help you with the comparative market analysis to help you determine the value of your home if you're planning on selling, or help you determine the going rate for the neighborhood you're moving into. She can also work at your pace.
Awesome. All right, I'll give her a shot. What's her phone number?
On Facebook, Kimmy Najad, Exit Realty Metro. Her phone number is 902-880-8429, and her email is kimia@exitmetro.ca.
902-880-8429. Awesome. Thanks.
This podcast was brought to you by Dan Lomas. That's LOMAS of lomasfinancial.ca.
Are you a small business owner who wants to keep more of your hard-earned profits and pay less taxes to the CRA? Do you want to plan for a comfortable and secure retirement? If your answer is yes, then you need to talk to Dan Lomas at Lomas Financial.
Dan Lomas is a financial advisor who has been helping successful entrepreneurs and business owners for over 2.5 decades. He utilizes customized solutions that can help you keep your earnings, dramatically reducing passive income tax.
Dan Lomas and his team will help you transition corporate wealth into personal wealth by utilizing customized executive pension plans. Dan will show you how to convert business wealth into personal wealth in a professional manner.
Don't let the CRA take more money than they deserve. Don't let your retirement dreams fade away. Contact Dan Lomas today and let him guide you on your path to financial success.
Visit Dan Lomas at lomasfinancial.ca or call him direct at 902-209-0855. That's 902-209-0855. Cheers!
Cheers!
Welcome to the Afternoon Pint. I am Matt Conrad here by myself without Mike. However, we have a guest here, and who do we have here?
My name's Karen Dean, and I am so happy to be here, but sorry that we're only a party of 2 today.
Yeah, Mike has a weak immune system, so I'm going to keep continuing
Happens to the worst of us.
Yeah, fair enough. He can edit this out if he wants to. So, Karen, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. You have a whole bunch of things that we can talk about because your resume is quite long.
I don't even know where to start. What do you want to know today?
Well, okay, so I had to copy some of this stuff down. So on your LinkedIn,
yes,
I see resilience expert, inspiring speaker, Canadian best-selling author, entrepreneur, success coach, fierce leader, mentor, solo mom, survivor, advocate, and limit pusher.
That's me.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
What do you dominantly do with your time?
I spend most of my time teaching others about resilience. I think we have never needed resilience more than we need it right now. The tools that I teach are things that have worked for me personally. I've also studied it, but most of it is from my own personal experience, going through some really, really hard things and having to figure out how to get through them and survive and thrive and get 3 kids through them. And there's been a lot of challenges. So I just felt that the universe, God, whatever you believe in, did not give me all that shit for no reason, but it was to help others.
Okay.
And so that's what I do. I used to work mainly with just women, but I'm now trying to get into more companies because the people who need my help go to jobs every day.
Right, yeah.
Our lack of resilience or less resilience than we need can sometimes affect our work.
Right.
And I think it's really important for businesses to invest in their employees. I mean, resilience is really just one part of our mental health, and I think we really need to invest in our employees and to make our workplaces healthier so that those employees can go home and make their homes healthier. It all works together. The days of you leave work at work and home at home, I don't think were ever realistic, and I think they're less realistic now.
Fair enough, especially with like a lot of hybrid working and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're literally working in your home half the time.
Yes.
For a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right.
And just the last 4 years in the pandemic, has brought up so many issues for so many people. It's changed how we live so much. And,
Very much.
I'm just really passionate about giving back and helping and trying to, make a difference and make people just be happier and live better lives and raise better kids and all those things.
Okay, so that's your raison d'etre.
That is how I try to feed my kids these days, is getting paid to do that.
All right, so what, again, let's start kind of the beginning. So you mentioned that you had to get yourself and kids through some really tough times. Do you mind talking a little
I
about that?
don't. I'm an open book.
Open book. An author is an open book.
Yes, exactly. Well, there are a lot of stories. I think my first real challenge with resilience, it started, I've been married twice because I don't learn things very well the first time. But my first marriage kind of jumped into it way too fast. And the day after I told my brand new husband that I was pregnant, I was so excited. He said, great, but if you ever try to leave me, I'll shoot you in the head when you drive out the driveway.
Holy shit.
And that started 9.5 years of an abusive marriage because I was too scared to leave.
So, okay. He says that after you tell him you're pregnant. Like, do you think the pregnancy almost like triggered that? Like, oh, this is my kid now? Or like, do you think
No, he had 2 kids from a previous relationship. So
Okay.
it wasn't that. It was just, he's just a controlling, narcissistic guy
POS.
who, he's like, okay, now I've got you, so now I can bring out the real me, which is the sad truth for a lot of people.
So did that come out like right after the marriage? Like
Yeah, I got
we're talking
pregnant
like
on the
next day?
honeymoon.
Oh, there you go.
So
Okay.
this was like 3 weeks into the marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I've seen him shoot a squirrel while it was running, so I knew he's a good shot.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I took him seriously, and he reminded me of that several times throughout our marriage.
Yeah, like that tends to be a common theme of, that narcissistic, possessive.
Yeah. And there was a lot of abuse. And like I said, 9.5 years later, I finally got brave enough to leave. But before that even happened, the second baby that I had with him was a save the marriage baby. Those never work.
Yeah.
And 3 years after the first baby. And that baby, when he was 7.5 weeks old, was like a rag doll one morning. He had been kind of sick for a few days, and I take him to a family doctor, and they said, we don't know what's wrong. If he's still sick in a few days, bring him back. But this morning I woke up, and he was literally rag doll, wouldn't cry, wouldn't eat.
Oh, jeez.
And so I said, I'm going to the IWK. And when I got there, I don't know, most parents have had to take their child to a hospital emergency at some point, but you usually are there for hours before you get seen.
Right.
I didn't have time to change his diaper. They had us in a room, and multiple tests, felt like a million tests. And I found out 4 days later, they admitted us to the hospital that day, but 4 days later, a team of neurologists came to our room, and said that he had been born with a permanent brain injury and would probably never be able to walk or talk. I'd already found out he had a hole in his heart a couple days before that.
Holy smokes.
And the sickness had been caused by a bladder issue, that it was reflux from his bladder that had caused a kidney infection, and the kidney infection had gone into his blood, so he was septic.
Holy.
Had I waited an hour longer to get to the IWK, he would have been dead, they told me.
Yeah,
So-
that's like parent worst nightmare.
Yeah, it truly was. And, giving an 8-week-old baby a spinal tap, I don't recommend it. They asked me to leave the room because I couldn't handle it because he was just crying his little heart out. And so, that little baby boy, I, like every mom or dad would do, I cried for the weekend. Well, actually not everyone, because my ex-husband was like, there's nothing wrong with him, he's fine. And he truly believed that for the whole time. But he wasn't at the hospital either.
Right, yeah.
So I cried for a whole weekend. I did some research online. What he has is called periventricular leukomalacia, which is...
That's a mouthful is what
It is. PVL is the abbreviation. This is 2001, so the internet isn't what it is today.
Oh, no.
And I found a chat group of parents of kids with this.
In 2001?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was horrible, though. It was all nightmare stories.
Yeah.
And that one day, probably 3 or 4 days after we got out of the hospital, I was just watching his sister run around. She was 3 and holding him in my arms. And I said, that's not going to be my kid.
Yeah.
And I got him every bit of help that I could get. And he's now 23. I like to say that he's as normal as men get. Sorry. But, you know, they told me he would probably never be able to walk or talk and would most likely be tube fed. And he walks, talks, drives a haul truck in a mine, has always been a contributing member to society. And then in the end of June of 2020, he went to the hospital by himself for the very first time in his life and came out being told he had cancer. So the beauty of his story is that all the tools I taught him when he was a preschooler and was every developmental milestone that, our kids reach, he was delayed on. He, delayed walking, delayed talking, but actually did it, which was, they still don't understand how he can walk and talk because if you look at a CT or an MRI of his brain, it's still all kinds of messed up in there. But he's rewired it to work. And when he went to the hospital, found out he had cancer, he was just like, okay, let's just, his exact words every day, because he was 19 at the time, were get this shit out of me so I can go back to work.
Wow.
And I think he's maybe the only person on the planet that thinks cancer is a minor inconvenience.
Okay.
Because he just had that really positive attitude every single day. And he vomited 3 times during chemo. That was it. He had 6 rounds of chemo. That was his only real illness. He was tired. He lost his hair. And then halfway through his 25 rounds of radiation, he went back to work. And most people from radiation are burnt, blistered. They told him to expect to have throat issues, heart issues, lung issues, because his tumor was in his chest. It's called primary mediastinal large B-cell lymphoma. I could write a medical exam and probably pass by now.
Holy
And he went back to work halfway through radiation. He had no side effects, nothing. His skin didn't even get red from radiation. And I was like, dude, you're not human. I don't know how you got through this. But I really think that positive mindset was a big help to him.
Yeah.
Was, I'm fine. I'm going to get through this. And he did.
It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
He really is a miracle boy.
Jeez, well, I mean, really, like, you don't get much more thrown at you.
Oh, there's more.
Okay, then. Well, yeah, well, I mean, we can get to that kind of thing, but I mean, that's a lot to toss at a young kid, and for him to just be able to say, hey, let's just keep on moving. I mean, to a degree, I guess, with some of the hurdles that he had to overcome, I guess that you just get conditioned for this, I guess, right? Like I
used to say to him when he was little, one of his first words was can't. Whenever I tried to make him do things, it was I can't.
I think no and the opposite is always the first thing that kids want to do.
Yes, anything in opposition. But we were pushing him. He went to physiotherapy every 2 weeks. He went to occupational therapy, speech therapy. He did every therapy known to man.
Wow.
And, strangers were pushing him to do things, and he was like, can't. And I used to say to him, there's no such thing as I can't. There's only I don't want to.
Right.
And that's kind of how he's lived his life, and his 2 sisters as well. They've all heard me say that so many hundreds of times that they're resilient young adult.
I think kids are more resilient than what adults really give them credit for.
For sure.
As long as you encourage them to do it, and you're not there to constantly pick up the pieces for them, they can get through it.
They can.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I've learned in my research for my work that I do, is that a lot of our limiting beliefs and our self-doubt gets programmed in us before we're 7 years old.
Okay.
And then we bring it to adulthood because it's programmed in our little sponge brains that we have as tiny people.
Right.
And it just stays there. And some of us just don't know how to change it. And we don't even realize that programming is somebody else's thoughts, somebody else's limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Because as adults, we do limit our kids. We think, oh, don't do that, you're going to get hurt. Or
Right.
if I want to be an astronaut, they're like, you're never going to be an astronaut. We just,
Exactly.
we shut down our kids so much of their dreams because of our own limiting beliefs, our own self-doubt, our own lack of self-love, all the things. We put it on our kids, and we're really doing our kids a disservice. And obviously we want to keep them safe, but sometimes we have to let them push the limits a little bit and learn their own strengths.
I mean, I firmly believe that. I'm the type of parent that, my wife and I kind of joke around and stuff like that. We were like, we're all brainwashing our kids.
We are.
Right?
Literally we are.
Yeah, whatever you want to say, but I try not to necessarily fully do that. I just want to be there, right? I guess in my head, because I want to be a parent that goes to my kid and follows his interest and embraces whatever he finds
And your
interesting.
kid will love you so much for it. I mean, they might hate you at the moment, but they will later appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because, I've been there. I think every game that my kids played, except maybe a few, no matter what they were doing. And sometimes they're like, because I played basketball, and when my daughter played basketball, I was the mom on the sidelines going, do this, do this. And she's like, Mom,
Right.
shut up. But
I think
she
that's normal.
listened.
But that's normal. I think, at some point, teenagers have to, not like their parents for a little bit.
Yes. I haven't experienced that with my 16-year-old. That's my youngest. I've been her only mom, her only parent, since she was 3. So we are...
So that's all she remembers.
Yeah, we are really, really close.
Yeah.
And, so she hasn't hated me yet. Maybe for moments, but not for long term.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, I can find that happens a little bit too. I mean, obviously being the only parent, you kind of have that little bit more friendship type of thing that develops, I think.
Yeah.
Just from what I've seen.
Yeah, and, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be friends with your kid. But I think in our relationship, we are friends until I have to be the mom.
Agreed.
And she's a really good kid, and she makes great marks. She homeschooled herself through grade 7 while her brother was getting cancer treatment.
That's
and
amazing.
She never does anything to make me get mad at her other than some sass, which, I can't really get mad about that because she probably learned it from me.
But, there's something to be said about that, about how you can... You don't have to be authoritative, right?
No. You have to set a good example.
Yeah, right. And at the same, I kind of look at that as the same time, me being I've been in management for several years, years now, and I never take an authoritative approach, mostly because I'm like, well, we're all adults here. Right? I shouldn't have to. When some people think don't be too friendly with your employees because you may have to fire one of them someday, kind of thing. And I get that, but as long as you're not doing anything inappropriate or anything like that, and if you're doing your job right, I've never had to surprise fire somebody. Never.
No, they know it's coming.
They know it's coming. The conversations is like, hey, you know what? You need to do this. And so it's every conversation I've ever had with an employee has always been. I had one person who quit because they didn't want me to fire them.
Well, there you go. Makes it easier.
Yeah, they knew that it was coming by the end of the month kind of thing. This was a few years ago, and they were just like, I don't want you to fire me. So here's my 2 weeks notice.
Yeah, I'll be gone.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, fair enough, right? But they knew, right? And I thought it's not that different from parenting.
No.
If your parent, obviously kids are going to get attitudes. They're going to whatever. There's lots of things that can happen in between. But I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you can be friends with... I hope my son and I are best friends.
Yeah. And my oldest daughter, she was a fiery little toddler. And I had so many people say, you can't let her be like that. You can't let her talk like that. And I said, yes, I can, because she's going to need these skills when she's an adult.
Yeah.
It's my job to teach her how to use them properly. Not to
Right.
knock it out of her, but how to use them properly. And I think I say this a lot, that we sometimes forget we're not raising children, we're raising adults.
Yes. Yeah, it's literally our job is to create
Yeah.
awesome adults.
Yeah, and parenting is like the most rewarding but most painful journey all at the same time, because you're taking this
Yeah.
human, this human that you created, literally, and you've grown, your job is to grow that human into someone who doesn't need you anymore.
Exactly.
And when my first daughter left home, I was like, wow, I did a really good job at this raising an independent kid thing, because she left home at 17 to go to college, because she's October 1st baby, so she was
okay.
young,
She was early,
graduating.
Yep.
And she's never
Talked to me since. No.
well, she talks. We talk all the time. We get along great, but she's never really needed me.
Right.
She's never asked for money. She's put herself through college. She bought a house in 2020. They just had a baby, her and her boyfriend. She's been
Wow, that's nice.
completely independent. She's now 26. Has a management job with Nova Scotia Health.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Yeah.
she's just done incredibly well.
Yeah.
And has been through some really crappy things in her life.
Obviously, yeah.
And yeah, we didn't even talk about her stuff.
No,
So,
but I mean, even adjacently,
Yeah.
I mean, being in a, having to be around an abusive person is still not great. And being around an abusive person tacked on with a brother who's getting probably a lot of attention because
He
of
did.
health issues.
Yeah. She got drugged
yeah.
to the hospital a lot of times, because even on top of his health issues, he was hospitalized twice.
Yeah.
Once was chickenpox, pneumonia, thrush, and a broken collarbone all at the same time.
Holy smokes. He does nothing small.
My kids don't.
Yeah.
None of them, really.
Yeah.
And he had a surgery because his fingers were webbed together when he was born.
Holy smokes.
And yeah, I was at the IWK with him almost 200 times before he started school for appointments and such things. So
Wow.
I am the parent that shows people around the hospital, because
Because
people
it's a
get
lot.
lost.
Yeah, yeah. They give you a key yet? Like-
Not yet, no. Luckily, I haven't been there much in recent years.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
The kids are getting older, and my youngest daughter is my healthy one, so.
So
she hasn't
your
been there
first
as much.
daughter then, so you said that she had some things too?
When she was 14, she was at school one day, and her lung spontaneously collapsed.
Yeah, that's scary.
Apparently, it happens frequently to tall teenagers with blonde hair and blue eyes who are athletic. That's what the ambulance attendant told us on the way to the hospital. So, yeah, she called me from school and said, I can't breathe, my chest really hurts, can you come get me? And she had a hole in her lung.
That must be so scary.
It was, and we
I mean,
spent...
not like obviously for you, but also for her. Like I can,
Yeah.
everybody kind of knows that feeling of like gasping for air and
Yeah.
just here and there kind of thing. But then to live it,
Yeah, at 14.
yeah,
In band. She was in band class playing her clarinet. And
I blame the clarinet.
she's never touched a clarinet
Yeah.
since.
I played the clarinet. I hated it. I hated that instrument.
So we also will never own a fish tank, because when you have a collapsed lung, they hook this little machine up like through the chest tube, and it bubbles like a fish tank. And we listened to that for 5 days. And she was scheduled for surgery at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and the hole in her lung healed at midnight Friday night. So she did not need surgery. It healed on its own, and we got to come home. And then the following year, when she was 15, that summer, she lost 75% of her strength on her left side and had no feeling on her right side over a period of a couple of weeks. This just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And I took her for an MRI at the IWK, and they said, you'll get the result. It was a Friday. They said, you'll get the results next week. And when she came out of the machine, they said, neurology wants to see you right now. And we went upstairs, and they said, you have multiple sclerosis. You're not going home. You're spending the weekend here to get treated immediately. And so I had to rush home and get us some clothes and things. MS at 15 and lung collapse at 14. And by that time, we had been through, as a family, our second divorce together, because I had remarried after I left the first abusive husband and jumped into another even worse relationship.
Worse relationship.
Oh, it was worse. Yeah.
Okay.
We're divorced now, but since we got divorced, he's now a card-holding member of the National Sex Offender Registry and has pled guilty to sexually assaulting 2 teenage girls.
Okay.
Obviously, I didn't know this when I married him.
Obviously, yeah.
But that's why we're divorced, is because
Yeah.
I found out about one of them, and then the second one appeared 6.5 years later. So that's why I've been a solo mom since 2011, is because...
That's terrifying to, like, on top of that, to find out, like, hey, I have this person in my home when I have children in my home.
someone you trust
Yeah.
and love.
Well, they do say that 9 times out of 10 it is someone
It
you
is,
trust, though.
and that is a very real statistic. And I've done a lot of work, a lot of studying about it since that happened. Because, of course, as a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that even? Like, how did I not know this? How did I not see this? You question everything about yourself, about, well, how to marry this person.
Well, I mean, like they I think they do a really good job at hiding
They
that stuff.
really do.
Right? Like it's their whole life.
Yeah.
So,
And this actually started when he was a kid, and his family hid it for years.
Wow.
Because I heard stories later from him. He admitted that, there were the second woman who charged him, the incidents dated back 20 years.
Oh, okay.
And that was 2017. So it's a really, really big issue in our society.
Yeah.
And I think we don't even realize it because so many things don't get reported.
Exactly.
There's a lot of skeletons in a lot of closets that people don't talk about. And, this could be a whole other episode, but have you heard the man versus bear debate these days?
Yeah.
That's
I you know what? It's so funny because that is a big thing, and it's weird because I try to check my privilege often, and when I first kind of heard it, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I get that, but honestly, it's my wife also, like, it's funny, my wife of all kind of like was like, that's also not fair at the same time.
Yeah,
right.
There
she's
are
like,
two sides to it.
Yeah, because
for sure.
she's like, hey, her thing is like, my wife's very logical in the sense where she's like, yeah, but a bear will kill you, kind of thing, right? Like a bear will hurt you. Period. You know that for a fact, kind of thing. So her thing is like, I asked her. She didn't even know about the trend. I actually just told her about this. She didn't even know.
I just found out about it last week.
And I was like, what would I mentioned it, and she was like, what's that? And I told her, and she was like, well, obviously a man. And I was like, that's not what everyone's saying.
No.
But she did say, well, obviously different people's experiences would obviously, if they have trauma and things like that, that's going to change their opinion on things. I mean, it's one of those things where it's so weird. Being a male, straight male, white male, I often joke saying, like, you can't even hurt my feelings, kind of thing, right? Because, like, there's nothing you can say.
Because most men pride themselves in not having feelings. That's a whole other conversation.
Well, it's not that I don't have feelings. I have feelings. It's just, it's a joke that comedians used to say, like, we have all the privilege that you can't even hurt my feelings, kind of thing, right? And I kind of subscribe to that because it's like, you know what? If you have conversations with people, women, minorities, and all this different, like, they talk about the things that they have to worry about on a daily basis, and I'm just kind of like, I've never worried about anything ever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me, where I was just kind of like, yeah, I have a whole bunch of privilege because I literally don't worry about things.
Yeah. You don't worry about walking down the street by yourself?
Never.
No.
And not only, like, I go a little bit further. Like, it drives my wife nuts that I don't get nervous about anything. I could be going for a job interview that I really wanted, and she's like, "Are you nervous?" I'm like, "No, why?" And she was like, "Well, it's like a big deal or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, they're not going to kill me, right? Like, it's like, it's not like,
I'm
do you
just
get the
gonna talk
job
to
or
them.
die?"
Yeah.
Like, so, but there's that. But then there's also that fact that I've never had to worry. I'm not a small guy. I'm not like all these things that I'm just like, I've never worried about it.
Yeah.
So I have to check my privilege on that. But at the same time,
There are some really good guys, I will say that.
there are. And it sucks that I don't like being in a category where people would rather be with a bear.
Yeah.
than me. Like, I would hope that you would want to rather be with me.
Yes.
Because I think I could probably get you out of the woods. I have a good sense of direction,
Yes.
and I can help you, kind of thing, right? So I don't like being in that category, and there's times where I'm kind of like, nah, I don't like that. I don't. There's also that catch-22 of like, should we be perpetuating the like watch out for men, they're evil type of thing in society? But the fact is that most violent crimes are men.
By men.
So-
and many against women.
Exactly.
And that's where it comes from. And,
Exactly.
And I think it's the women who have been hurt who are screaming the loudest about this issue.
Which makes
for
sense,
sure.
obviously.
I mean, and like we said before, it's often not the random man you may run into in the woods that's going to hurt you. It's the man who lives in your house.
Well, and that's the other thing too. That's
Yeah.
another good point. It's like, it's probably the person you know the best.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think about too is like, we had this conversation because my son goes to daycare, and we just got word, we got an email that they're going to be having a student who's a male, and will be the only male at the daycare. And there's a part of me that's like, again, as that male who's thinking like, well, if I went and worked at a daycare, it should be fine. I'm not going to hurt anybody. In fact, I would have nothing but the best intentions. But at the same time, like, I don't know if I want a man taking care of my kid.
Yes.
I'm just like, what is going on, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have two sides of this thing where, I would leave my kid we do leave my kid with women we have no idea. We don't know them. We know their names.
Yeah.
We know they probably passed a check.
Hopefully.
Right? But it's one of those things like where, if someone came to me and was like, hey, here's a strange woman, here's a strange man, who you going to leave your kid with? I'm picking the woman 11 times out of 10.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's quite a dilemma for a lot of women because we have lived experience. And even before I was a mom and had kids, when I was in university, I was home in my apartment one night. A bunch of us had all been out. I'm not a drinker, so I wasn't drunk.
Right.
I went in my bedroom, locked my door. There were 3 people staying overnight who I considered to be friends. 2 guys and a girl, and like one was a couple and one was just a friend. And that was back in the day when your bedroom doors you could unlock with the inside of a pen.
Yeah.
I'm sleeping in my bed, and this guy who's way bigger than me came in my bedroom, and I woke up with him on top of me, and he
No
raped
way.
me.
Jesus.
And someone I was hanging out with for months, and he was a friend of a friend. We all knew each other. We all went out together. And there's a lot of women who have lived experience like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not that extreme. Maybe it's just a grab on the street or
Right.
a comment that, but like I said, you don't worry about walking down the street. One night I was going to an event downtown. I'm single, I'm always by myself, and I was walking along Lower Water Street talking to my daughter on the phone, and I'm like, okay, I'm meeting a strange guy right now. I got to get my I'm going to kick your ass face on. And she's laughing at me, and I'm like, no, serious. Like, he kind of creeped me out, so I have to look like I can kick his ass because,
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to look like I'm inviting him to talk to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Just things I've never really, like, I'm not stupid. Like, I'm not going to go in certain parts of town and, at 1 o'clock in the morning and think that that's perfectly fine. But, like, I would have no problem walking down any part of, like, Lower Water Street. I would have no problem kind of thing. So, yeah, that's just things I just don't realize. It's like,
Yeah.
so that, like...
We don't
All of
want
those
this to be a really sad podcast, do
No,
we?
but I mean, it speaks to a lot of the resilience, and I think that actually gives a really great background, to anyone listening, of what your family, and all the trauma that you've had to go through. So, I mean, you've had trauma, your kids have had trauma, and at some point in time, you have to raise kids with trauma, not pass on that generational trauma.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
And my goal the whole time was I need to raise good humans who
Right.
make good choices.
Yeah.
Because I used to work in the schools with special needs kids. And you see so many kids who use whatever's going on at home as an excuse to be bad at school or
Right.
do drugs
Lash out
or
sometimes,
become
yeah.
alcoholics or beat people up or,
Yeah.
generally make bad choices. And I thought, no, my kids are not going to get to use that excuse.
Right.
And yeah, they're all like really good people who contribute to society and have jobs and have never been brought home by the police or anything. They're
So
just-
how do you do that? And how do you teach people, how do you teach people resilience? Because it has to be something you want, right?
Yeah. You have to first understand that you are resilient, because many of us believe we're not.
Yeah.
And that, we get stuck in that I can't do this mindset, or I'm not strong. You're strong, but I'm not that strong. But we all are. We're all born with resilience. So, I like to say when I start my talks is, these skills don't just help you at work or at home, but we have to teach these to our kids. It's, again, the not bubble wrapping our kids. We have to give them the tools to deal with the tough things.
Right.
And like the simplest thing that helps you through a tough time, and it sounds silly, but is learning how to breathe. Because when you get, something upsets you, scares you, whatever, everyone's first reaction is your shoulders go up to your earlobes and you tense up and you hold your breath.
Right.
And you're depriving your brain of the oxygen to actually be able to think.
Yeah, you're kind of having that amygdala hijack.
Yeah, so you have to, I have learned to repeat it in my head, like breathe, 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 breathe.
Right.
Because you have to consciously think about that and override your subconscious to say, all right, I need to breathe through this for a minute, and then I'll be able to make a healthier choice. Because our first choice, I'm just thinking of, in a physical situation is, someone upsets you, you punch them in the face. So, I've seen teenagers do that. But, maybe there's a healthier way to deal with that situation.
Most times, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing when you're a teenager. It's another thing when you're an adult, right?
Yeah.
Right. You have to learn to calm that back because, if you're a 14-year-old punching another 14-year-old in the face, it's a fight. People get moved off, kind of thing. Whatever, it's fine. But as a 38-year-old, if I hit another 38-year-old, it's like
You're in trouble.
not only in trouble, my family's in trouble. Everything.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
So, we have to learn the skills to, work through all those times and to not react, but to give it time and respond.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of just really simple things. So much of the time we focus on the negatives and the scary things, and you have to consciously override. Again, it's that subconscious mind that got programmed in us before we were 7.
Right.
To reprogram that now as adults, to think like an adult and to think, okay, I can do this. I've survived 100% of my bad days.
Yeah.
So I can get through this one too. And I think what, really shatters our resilience is when we just get stuck in the negative and the, I can't do this, I'm not worthy, all of that negative stuff that gets put inside of us. The tool that changed my life after my second horrible divorce was I went to a life coach, and I'll speak for women because I can't speak for men, but we often think we can't invest in ourselves. We're so looking after everybody else all the time, and this life coach wanted $150 for this program, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't spend $150 on myself. And then I thought, yes, I can. And she gave me this postcard. And she said, I want you to put this in your bathroom and read these words to yourself every single day. Because at the time she was like, well, what did you do to attract all these bad things to your life? And I'm like, what the hell do you mean? I didn't do anything. Like, these people did this stuff to me.
That's right.
And she goes, no, you have a part to play. And you'll understand when I tell you what the words were. But it took me 2 years to be able to say the words to myself. And the words are, I deeply and completely love myself. And I have not met a woman yet that can say those words confidently and without, laughing or crying or like, oh my God, I didn't mean that. And I do it every time I do a talk live in an audience. And so I don't know if men feel the same, but I think it really comes back to having faith in ourselves.
Yeah.
And not listening to everybody else's voices that are telling us we can't. Everybody who's, putting fear in us of things we don't need to be scared of. And really, when I do my talks on stage, there's 8 tools that I teach, but it's really about getting inside of ourselves and understanding our own strength to get through the tough things.
I took an emotional, I've taken some emotional intelligence courses and stuff like that, but there was one in particular that I took that talked about having an anchor that would help kind of like anchor you, whether it be an object or whatever it may be, something that you're always going to kind of have on your person or that you can have close by that can help kind of anchor you when you become emotional or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting thing, because by anchoring yourself, it can. The reason I thought it was interesting, I am a pretty logical person. I try to come up with the logical, the logical way of solving things. Some people say that I have a deficiency in empathy. I have lots of sympathy.
Yes.
I listen to your story and I'm like, holy crap, right? I have tons of sympathy for it. And if it was currently happening, I'd be like, that sounds awful. Let's go like kill this person, right? Like, that would be my thing. It's like, hey, I recognize what you're going through is terrible. Let's fix it, right? That's not always the empathetic thing to do.
No.
So, yeah.
You have to work through it. But I can remember before my Save the Marriage baby was born, like when my first baby was 2, and I clearly remember sitting in my rocking chair, talking to my best friend on the phone, saying, I need to get out of this marriage. And she was like, well, yeah, like you need to leave him. Yeah. And I said, I can't be a single mom. I can't look after this kid by myself. And he had made me quit my job and work in his business. And so I didn't have my own source of income.
Right.
And I said, I can't do this on my own. Yeah. And now I look back at that moment and think, I have been parenting 3 kids by myself since 2011, all the teenage years by myself.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, I could have done it. And no regrets. A lot of life lessons learned. And, I wouldn't have had my son if I had left then. But, you just have to learn to believe in yourself and understand that you have way more strength than you think you do.
Yeah.
And, that's when a lot of us have so many negative influences in our lives, and, the generation older than us had pretty tough lives, and most of them were taught if you had any kind of emotional overwhelm, you had to suck it up and get over it. And, that's what we were taught. And I think we need to learn healthier ways to do it.
Yeah, I think at least that's one thing I can kind of speak for, like, the male perspective of things, is that it is that's still kind of there. I mean, like, I still kind of think that way, not for anybody else, but for me, right? Yeah. I'm not going to be. I wouldn't make fun of anybody or whatever if they want to talk about things or whatever. But I laugh and say, like, I only have like 4 emotions. Right? Really simple 4 emotions.
Which ones are yours? Because I have a friend in PEI who's a lot like you, and he has 3.
Okay, maybe I only have 3. I don't know, but like I would say that I'm 90% of the time I'm pretty happy-go-lucky, right?
Yeah.
Pretty happy. Then I can, I can get sad, but it generally has to be like something pretty big, right? I lost a cousin to suicide. I was pretty sad in that time. But and then I have anger. That's probably my number 2, mostly due to traffic.
Exactly. That tests our resilience a lot.
Yes, it does. So there's that. And I mean, I guess I don't know. Is surprise an emotion? Because shock or surprise or whatever. I have a little bit of that, I guess. I don't know. I think that's.
Well, my friend from PEI, I throw him under the bus every time I do a motivational speech, because he says the only 3 things he feels are happy, hungry, and horny. So.
Okay, well, there's those. Okay, yeah. I guess I didn't realize those were emotions. I guess
they're not really. I guess they're feelings. But
but it's just one of those things where it's like, I am the type of person that honestly, like, it would be like if something's wrong, if something's up, or something's wrong, it's like, I'll just deal with it. And it's like, whatever. Yeah, I talk about certain things like that, but I do think that's one stigma where, like, we could do better in the male society, and I think it would make a better society.
I think so.
If men can be just more emotional and more like be able to talk more frequently
and feel all the feelings. That's tool number 7 in my talk, is feeling all the feelings, because ignoring trauma is not the same thing as healing.
Right.
And I think when we stuff it down so much and, get over it, tough it out, we're really just stuffing those feelings inside of us and trying to ignore them. But they will explode someday.
Yeah.
If it's minor trauma, not so much. But if I had stuffed down all the trauma that I had been through, I would probably be in a nice rubber room by now, because you just can't. You have to work through it. You have to.
Yeah.
You can't go around it. You can't just put up a wall. You actually have to feel the feelings and work through the emotions, and then they do release.
Yeah.
And I don't think you ever get over anything. You just move on from it with the lessons that it's taught you.
Or something, right?
Yeah. Like all of that trauma is still there inside of me, and I'm not, always so cheerful and happy every day. Sometimes there are things that affect me based on my past experience, but now I have the tools, because I've worked so hard at developing those tools, that now I can get through it a lot easier. And what might have really had me sad for days or weeks now can be hours. I always say I have bad minutes, I have bad hours, but I try to never have a bad day. I try to not let all that noise and negativity ruin an entire day.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think I'm like that. Like, I recover fast. So if I'm angry or if something upsets me or whatever, I recover fast.
So you've got some resilience tools, I think.
I think it annoys people. So it's funny. Talk a lot about my wife, but my wife's a lot smarter than I am, so we always have really good.
Can you say that again for her? I hope she's listening. Can you say that louder?
She's definitely. Listen. She has 2 degrees, masters, all that stuff. She's a lot smarter than I am, I just So we have a lot of discussions about emotions and stuff like that and everything. But I think the one thing that drives her crazy is. We can have a big fight, big argument, and she'll be like, okay, I gotta go for a walk or whatever, and I'm like, all right, whatever, and we go our ways, and honestly, 1 hour later, I'm like, what's up? Want to have a beer? You want to get something to eat or whatever? And she's just like, no, I'm still mad. And I'm like, not me.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
And she's just like, no. Kind of thing, right?
There's more to discuss in this.
Yeah, or maybe she just needs time, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes
and
it's just that.
And I think that's an important thing to accept, is that some of us need more time to process. And I've only dated 2 guys since I got divorced, and neither of them lasted that long. But the one guy was really upset because I said, I need to process that. And he was like, you and your stupid processing. And I'm like, no, I need to process my feelings. I need to work through it. Yeah. I'm not ready to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, be aware of that and respect that in your partner.
Yeah.
Is to say, just because I can get over it in an hour, they might need a little more time. It doesn't mean they want a divorce or they hate you or whatever.
Oh, exactly.
It's just they need more time to work through it in their own space. And that's a really important relationship tool.
Yeah, I can. Everyone, just like everyone learns on their own pace, everyone processes things on their own pace. It can be. I get it. I see both sides of it, because sometimes it can be kind of frustrating, because I'm kind of like, I am the one who uses that tool of well, you know what? Let's save the day. You know what? So we had a fight. Let's get over it right now.
Don't go to bed angry.
Yeah. Or, we've gone to bed, if we've had an argument, we've gone to bed, and this is the thing, I wake up and I'm like, hey, and she's like, no.
No, out of my face.
So, yeah, but I mean, it is what it is, I guess, so I try to process, but, we've been together, like I said, close to 15 years, so it's we've learned to deal with each other, and she's the one who helped me realize that I need to work on my empathy more.
Yes.
She's the one.
And good for you for saying okay.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
It is. I still have that let's fix this kind of thing, right? My thing is always this why do you want to be sad? Let's not be sad, right? Let's try to fix the thing that makes you sad. So, I mean, it's a work in progress, for sure.
But, sad's just something that you need to work through.
Yeah.
And you won't always be sad. There's an author, Sherry Fitch, who wrote a poem about that. You won't always be this sad. And it's true, but you just do have to feel those feelings sometimes. And one of the things, actually, my daughter, who's in grade 10, was asked to write an essay for school in English class about something that gets said in our home a lot. And she wrote it about one of the things I say all the time is it's okay to not be okay. You just can't
Right.
live there.
Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
like that.
it's when you live there that it causes the mental health issues that we're seeing so much and all of that. So you have to understand, it's okay that I'm not okay today.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that tomorrow is not going to be different. And that's when we have to really, go inside ourselves and use those tools, find something to be happy about. And I think we overthink, we hear so much about gratitude and joy, and I think we really overthink what that looks like. Because if you just sit and think about someone you really love, or you see a beautiful sunset, or, observe the flowers that are now growing, whatever your thing is, that's a gratitude practice.
Right.
It's that simple. It doesn't have to be, an hour-long meditation or yoga. I mean, all those things are great too, but I think we really overthink those tiny little things that can change our mindset to just appreciate a little thing that makes us happy.
Do you get like a lot of opportunities to go in and like talk to high school kids and things like that?
I would love to do. I have not had that opportunity yet,
Yeah.
other than when I worked in the schools, and I used to give them motivational speeches all the time. And
Because I think there would be a lot of people that could use like resiliency and things like that. Because obviously, it's a difficult time to be a teenager.
Yes.
Whether it be fitting in for whatever reason, all the hormones and emotions
Yeah.
that go through things, the peer
or the
pressure,
fact that we don't fit in.
or the fact that we don't fit
I
in.
mean,
Yeah, exactly.
I never felt like I fit in when I was in school.
Yeah.
And I still don't feel like I fit in most environments
Yeah.
because I'm different than a lot of people in the way I go about my life. And I think that we need to learn that that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's hard as a teenager to understand that, everyone's not going to be your friend, and that's okay.
That exactly, and that is true. And I just think of like I think about the LGBTQ plus community that have statistically higher suicide rates than others. Like those kids just need to be told, to simplify it, need to be told like this is temporary. High school's temporary.
Yeah.
Things get better.
And when you get out of this building, you
Yeah.
may never see these people again in your life.
Exactly.
And you can choose to find your people. And
Yeah.
when you're older, and we force our kids into these buildings where they're all taught like little soldiers to all the same subjects. But
Right.
then
Yeah.
when you get out into the real world is when you really find your people, and when you have the opportunity to spread your wings and find people who are more like you, because
Right.
they're out there. They may not be in your tiny community. I mean, I live in a literal village
Yes,
of
you
like
do.
1,500 people maybe, and
Yeah.
most of them are, retirement age. It's a small community. I still live there because after my first divorce, I moved back there because I thought it'd be a great place to raise my kids because it was home.
Right.
And I'm still there. And I still think it's a great place to raise your kids. But if you are slightly different than most of the kids, you just don't fit in.
Yeah.
And that's the case, I think, in every school everywhere.
Yeah.
There are the cool kids, quote unquote, and the ones who kind of rule the school, and if you're not one of them, you feel really left out. And that's just how it has always been.
Right.
But that isn't the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
So if there's any high school principals that would love to get me on the stage, that's kind of one of the things I would really love to do, is get into more schools and give these tools to
Yeah, we should.
teenagers, because we need to learn them before we're adults.
Yeah, I think that's something that really needs to kind of get out there. And so I mean,
I wish I had known them in school. It would have
Yeah.
changed a lot of my life. Again, I have no regrets. I learned a lot of really good things. I have 3 great kids, and it's now given me a career. But
Right.
I keep wondering, I wonder how life would have been different if I had have learned these in high school. Where would I be?
Right.
And what would I be doing? And I know I wouldn't have married either of those people, because
Yeah, see, that's the tough thing is it's like, on one hand, you're like, well, I could have avoided trauma and a horrible experience, but you also avoid your kids.
then I wouldn't have these kids that are just,
That apparently are amazing.
they are amazing. everything I've done for the last 26 years was to try to raise good kids.
Yeah.
And, I've kind of made my career around how I can be there for them, because I was the latchkey kid that, my parents both had to be to work at 7 a.m. They both worked for the same company. So we got ourselves off to school once we were old enough to do that. Before we were old enough, we went to a babysitter before school.
Right.
And then we went to the babysitter after school, or when we got old enough, we came home by ourselves and cooked fish sticks and fries or whatever for supper, and pizza with hot dogs on it. The things we ate was just unreal. But
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
I mean, that was what we ate back in the day. And, we had friends at our house, and our parents had no idea what we were doing. We didn't have cell phones back then.
That's right.
And, luckily, one of my brothers and I stayed out of trouble. My older brother, not so much. But, when I had kids, I just thought, I want to be there for my kids in a way that I didn't have when I was growing up. So I've always worked for myself, always worked from home, drop everything when a kid gets sick. Like, thank God, because there's no employer that would have given me all the time off I needed to get all the kids to all the things, when they were sick, let alone sports. And
It's not the truth,
yeah.
So speaking of your kids,
Yeah.
and because we're going to unpack your books, but like you're not the only author in
No,
your family.
I'm not.
One of your kids is an author.
Yeah, so my daughter, my youngest, when she was 13, she wanted a new horse because she's a horse girl, and horses are expensive.
Yeah.
And I said, you know that I'm a single mom, that, life is hard, and your brother just finished cancer treatment.
Yeah.
So, life's tough right now. And I said, so if you would like me to buy you this horse, you need to come up with a way to help pay for it. So she wrote a children's book. And
Amazing.
when she was 13. And I published it for her because I've self-published my own books. And it's called Sadie's Story. And it's about how it's okay to be different. And the characters are horses and a little girl who's named Casey, which is also my daughter's name. And it's based on her actual horse that she had before this one was Sadie. And, how Sadie's different. Went to a new barn and she was different, and about, learning to accept that. So she is an author. I don't promote it as much as I would like because kids at school make fun of her because she's an author. And
That's nothing to make fun of.
I know, it's jealousy.
Impressive. You know what? Nailed it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I saw a quote that said that you never get I can't remember how to say it, but it's like people don't criticize you. People above you don't criticize you. It's
exactly.
people who are below you try to drag you down.
Yeah. And, she understands it, but at the same time, she also has to deal with it every day at school. So she's like, can you just slack off a little bit? And, so when she's out of high school, she can promote her book all she wants. But,
Fair enough. I don't know. I think it's really cool. My wife does a writing technique, and she's a grade 3 teacher, but she does a writing technique that I think is really cool. And I kind of wish it was around when I was younger, because I was like, that would have taught me how to, write proper essays and write books and stuff, just the way they do it step by step.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, so like by like April, I think is what it is, these kids have a book. Like, it's not like it's not a thick book or anything, but it's a book. It's a book about a topic, and it has pages and subfacts and all this, the chapters and all this stuff. And she puts on a big book launch for these kids.
I love it.
Yeah, and so the parents come in the afternoon. She gets grape juice, so it's like drinking wine and a foot release and all this stuff or whatever, right? So she does this big event for it and celebrates the authors. I was like, man, I wish I had that when I was a kid.
Yeah. And I love the fact that she's putting the thought in them that they can be authors at a young age, because when Casey has gone and talked to some students at schools, at elementary schools, and they're like, what, you wrote a book and you're still a teenager? And she's like, yeah, you don't have to be a grown-up to do cool things.
Right.
And I think that's an important lesson for our kids, is you don't have to wait to be an adult to do, a lot of things. There's a lot of success stories of kids who have started businesses or, done some really cool things before they were adults.
Yeah, I think that's a huge, awesome. So you're an author, and you have 2 books.
Yes.
So you have, it was 2020 and then 2022?
Yeah.
That they came out? Yeah.
So the book in 2020, so as I said, my son was 19 when he was diagnosed with cancer. And because of COVID restrictions, I was not allowed to go in the hospital with him because he's considered an adult.
Right.
Again, sorry, but most 19-year-old boys are not adults.
Fair
And
enough.
he, in my mind, was not an adult. And he did have, a lot of things that he really couldn't do on his own, but he was forced to. He wasn't comfortable talking to doctors. He didn't know what questions to ask, all those types of things. So I was allowed to go into appointments, but I wasn't allowed to go into his actual treatment.
Okay, because they were letting certain support people and things like that for, I guess, appointments and stuff.
Yeah, so I could go to a doctor's appointment, but not when he was sitting there getting chemo treatment or radiation.
Okay.
And so his chemo was anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And I had to sit in my truck in the hospital parking lot because it's an hour's drive home and I wasn't leaving anyway, just in case something happened.
Yeah.
So I took that time to reach out to a lot of really incredible women that I know and published a book, which is my story and 21, sorry, I'm the 22nd, women's stories about the year of 2020. Which was a pretty large year here in Nova Scotia, and all the women are from Nova Scotia. I tried to get, a diverse group, and they all wrote their own stories, so I don't really take the credit as the author. I'm the publisher, and I put it all together. But there's teachers, there's farmers, there's 2 immigrant women, there's an Indigenous woman, there's business owners. The only one that I really wanted to get that I couldn't get was a new mom during COVID, but they were too busy being new moms during COVID to write their story. So I published the book 41 days after I came up with the idea. And
41 days?
Yeah, I self-published.
How do you self-publish something?
It's not as hard as it sounds, actually.
Yeah, okay.
And you actually make more money self-publishing
it's all
per
money goes to
copy,
you, right?
Yeah, than if I had gotten a traditional publisher. The publishing world's, kind of at this point where a lot of change needs to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah,
a lot of people still think you need to get a publisher to be successful, but
I know there's some online places that basically you can pay them I've talked to someone about, because I have some ideas, but again, I wish I had the skills to sit down and write. I need the attention span to do it. But I've talked to some, and they're like, "Yeah, you just pay us $1,700, and we'll make these printed copies. You just give us everything, and we'll print them."
I don't recommend that, but
fair enough. All right, there you go.
We can talk later.
Yeah.
It's a whole process, but. My book did really, really well. It sold enough copies to be considered a Canadian bestseller.
Yeah, I saw that.
And in Canada, that's only 5,000 copies, which I thought would be a way bigger number.
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of like podcasting. We're pretty I would consider us pretty low key. Except at one point in time, we were ranked in the top 50 on Apple Podcasts.
Love it.
So it was it's cool, but also the bar's kind of low. But
Yeah. Well, my biggest excitement, I think, from the whole thing was Peter Mansbridge, who most people probably know as legendary broadcaster. He released a book the week before mine. It was also in the same category on Amazon, Canadian Collections. And my book was ahead of his. Mine was number 1 and his was number 2.
Oh, no way.
For most of the time in a 6-month period. And,
that's awesome.
And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, and that being said, even still, 5,000 copies is still pretty impressive. When you think about, there's a story you come up with and you have 5,000 people who want to read it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's pretty good. I mean, we don't have the population that the U.S. has. We're also, from Nova Scotia. That's an impact. And beyond that, you're not Peter Mansbridge.
I'm not.
You haven't had a million.
No one knows me.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, and when you sell, most of those were sold on Amazon, so I don't know where they went. They probably went all over the world. Yeah. I have no idea because I don't see the names of people who order them. But I know a lot of them did stay in Nova Scotia. It is in chapters, different locations. It's kind of petering out now because it's 4 years later and books, only have a certain lifespan. But I need to get another book written. And yeah, it was, a lot of people kind of did know me at that point because after the terrible mass shooting we had here,
Yeah.
I had a clothing company as well, and I did Nova Scotia Strong clothing fundraisers. So
Okay.
most of the Nova Scotia Strong design or shirts that you see are probably from my house.
Oh, no way. Oh, wow.
I, in 3 months between the time of the shooting and the time my son was diagnosed with cancer, I was able to I gave all of my profits to the Red Cross Fund for the families of the victims, and I was able to raise $96,000.
Some
and
coin.
I got to be on television a few times, promoting that and talking about that.
Yeah.
So some people did know who I was from
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
which probably helped with the book sales. But yeah, that was the Monday. I took the check for $96,000 to the Red Cross, and on the Friday, my son started chemo.
Jeez.
So that was a very emotional week.
High-low.
Yeah.
Kind of a high-low thing kind of thing there, yeah.
Yeah, but it really, I always say helping is healing, and that's one of my resilience tools is when I am going through something hard, I want to help somebody else.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I've said that to so many people that if you're ever feeling down, do some volunteer work because it's
Yeah.
really hard to be down when you're helping somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Firmly believe
And
it.
I mean, again, the overthinking thing. Like, if you smile at a stranger on the street and they smile back, that's going to make you happy. Or
Yeah.
if you see somebody who, an elderly person trying to struggle with their bag to get in their vehicle or whatever, and you help them, it puts a smile on your face. It can really change your mood. And,
Yeah.
it can be such little things that we don't even think about that can really bring us out of that sad or upset mood that we're in.
Yeah, I heard something not that long ago, like this year, that, and I really liked it, where they said that all the nice things that we say about people at their funerals, we should be saying at their birthdays.
Yes, I just saw that actually today on Facebook, I think.
Yeah,
And we really should.
yeah,
And I think, we really don't celebrate our successes enough
yeah.
in general. And we don't celebrate other people's successes enough. There's way too much jealousy and envy, and, there's enough abundance for all of us. We really should be cheering each other on and supporting each other. Small businesses especially are having a really hard time right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to help somebody out in a little way, because you just never know what little tiny thing might make that person's day.
Well, that's very true.
Yeah,
Very true.
even sharing online, on your Facebook, so many people will say negative things on posts, but if you just share a small business's post with on your page,
Yeah.
and other people that may not even be aware of this business see it, like, that is a free way to help a small business owner.
Another cool thing that I actually did it with this podcast and a few other businesses, is like, you go on Facebook, there's those 3 little dots in the right corner. You click on that, brings up your friends list, invite all.
Yeah.
And there you go. You just sent maybe 1,000 or more invites to a small business and brought the attention to 1,000 or more people.
Yeah, that they follow their page.
And it costs you nothing.
Exactly.
I try to share these guys, like Great Roads is really good with us, so I try to share, even not just on the Afternoon Pint, but on my community page. I operate a community page that I run, and I try to share like their specials, because Mondays they have a sandwich special, and Tuesdays they have taco specials. It's like their specials are, I don't even know how they make money on them. They're
Right.
that low, and in a time where it's like expensive to go out to eat.
It's expensive to be alive.
Yeah, yeah. But these guys are doing 3 tacos for $10, or 2 tacos and fries for $10,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, share them out, support them, do whatever you can to it, kind of thing. 'Cause, the small business, especially the restaurants, they need it.
Yeah. And another thing that I did as a result of my book, I should say our book, because it's actually mine and those 21
Yeah,
other
of
women.
course, yeah.
I started a bursary program for young women from rural Nova Scotia, focusing on the area most affected by that tragedy. So Colchester County, East Hants, and the Musquodoboit Valley, because there was a victim from the Musquodoboit Valley.
Yeah.
And last year I gave the first one out to this incredible young woman who went to South Colchester Academy, lost both of her parents while she was still in high school.
Jeez.
And was still valedictorian, had this armload of awards, and you did community work as well as work within her school. And if you have $250 a year, go give a bursary to a high school. It doesn't even. It could be $100 a year. It could be $500. It could be
No,
that
it's
like.
true. Yeah.
Last year, because of my own financial situation, I was only able to give her $250, and I couldn't even afford that. But I promised that I would do something as a result of that book. And she actually just a few weeks ago sent me a really sweet message, and she's like, "Thank you so much. You were part of helping me get to my dreams." And it was this really sweet message. And it happened to come on one of the worst days I was having this year. A lot of personal things going on. And it just, it lit me up so much to know that I had helped her. And it was $250. It's not much money in the big scheme of things. But she was so grateful for it. And I think, we really need to think about what little thing could we do to change someone's life around us. And as parents, we do it every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I've been grateful enough that I get to be present at a couple. I've been involved in a few different associations where we've got to hand out some bursaries, some smaller ones, kind of thing for the most part. Like $500 kind of thing. But it's they're always grateful, and it's really great to kind of see a bunch of kids come up and get a bunch of money and stuff like that. These high schools that work on this bursary communities are just fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, $500 to a kid going off to college is a pretty big deal. Even $100 is.
Pays for their books or whatever, right?
Yeah. So it's just something that, really makes me happy to be able to give back and help that young woman. And, she's still thanking me for it a year later. So, that's something that I will continue to do.
Well, you know what? Mike's not here, but I am going to just make an executive decision of that. So we're going to give you $100 towards that.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm making that. I feel compelled enough to do that, so I'll let him know that that's what we're doing. So Afternoon Pint will give you $100 towards the bursary.
I will let the recipient know that Afternoon Pint
exactly.
helped out with this.
Here's your beer money for college.
You're not allowed to spend it on beer. You have to spend it on something else.
Exactly. So you wrote a second book as well.
It's it's a journal more than a book. So it has some writing at the beginning about why these tools work, but it's a self-love journal. And I think resilience and self-love are very connected. So it's some writing at the beginning about why these tools work, what to do. And I also have some resources on my website to go with it. But it's every single day you do the same thing with the goal of it getting easier. So every day write 3 things you love about yourself. Try to come up with 3 different ones. Not write the same 3 every single day. And I just actually saw on Instagram a woman talking about how she couldn't come up with 10 things she loved about herself.
Yeah.
So she reached out to her close friends and said, I'm going to write 10 things I love about you, and I want you to write 10 things you love about me.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
And so she had this huge whiteboard where she wrote it all down. But I think we really, things we love about ourselves, things we're grateful for, again, they can be the tiniest little things. They can be, I saw the tulips were in bloom today. It can be, the sunset was gorgeous today. It can be any little thing.
It can be. I mean, I know, kind of a friend of the family. He became a priest because he was watching a sunset, and he just honestly felt like he was called to do that.
Yeah.
Witnessing the beauty that he was looking at. So, you're right. The smallest things can influence us.
Yeah.
And do great things.
Exactly. So there's, these tools that you do every single day with the goal of it getting easier and becoming a habit. And it, again, reprograms your brain to think of the positives instead of instantly going to the negatives, which I think is the program for a lot of us that has just been put in us since we were children, is jumping to the negative instead of jumping to the positive. And that's what I programmed in my kids over the years was, this is really shitty, but we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this and be better people after we get through this. And so far so good.
You know what, Karen, I think that's actually a really good place to end it. We don't want to, we never try to run too long, but I've really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you. Me too.
And I think people listening will enjoy it as well. And I like ending on a positive note. So
Yes.
thank you very much
Thank
for coming
you.
here. I'll make sure we get you that $100.
Yes.
And cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.